We still do 7 NUFC Matters show a week for free. But if you want to help support NUFC Matters, then there are a few ways of doing it. Hit the like button on each live broadcast and video. This helps the channel grow. Hit the subscribe button and select the all notifications bell so you don't miss a single show. If you want to help us financially, then you can join the channel using this button with the membership starting at $1.99 a month. Or you can drop us a donation in the chat using a super sticker. We're also looking for sponsors. If you'd like your brand advertised on the flyers for the show and featured during the ad break, then email john@nufcmatters.com to arrange today. Good afternoon. Welcome to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith. Delighted to see you, joined by Supermac and Gibbo. Hi, lads.
Hi, guys. Steve. Hi, John.
Good to see you. And this week, as we know, we look back on last season. We get your highs and lows, and we get your take on the subject of Newcastle United. And first off, I'll come to you first, John, on this one. What was your goal of the season?
There's a good question. Since you mentioned it, I've gone through all 68 Premier League goals and watched them all again. And there was some bloody crackers. There was some smashers. You know, the wonderful thing, thinking of all this, in previous seasons, Steve, I've struggled to find a winner. You know, to find one winner, I've struggled, player of the season or something. Goodness gracious me, when we've been relegated, you know, you're struggling. There's been 6, half a dozen for every category this season. It's been such a fabulous season. And that's great. I looked through the goals, and I mean, there's obviously Wilson scored 18 in the Premier League. Almiron got 11, where the previous season he got 1. And the funny thing is I watched them, guys. Nearly everyone was the same, you know, coming in off the wing and passing it with the outside of his foot into the top corner, far corner of the net. Virtually every goal was a replica. There were some good ones in there, but there were replicas. So much looked the same, and that's good. That's great. I'm not complaining about that. The one that stood out for me is one that perhaps didn't stand out for other people. But if you remember, when we went to Nottingham Forest, we won 2-1 with a penalty in the last minute scored by Isaac, which is the famous one where Trippier held the ball and didn't give it up and then give it up at the last minute, take the pressure off him, and he stuck it in. But before that, his equaliser, when the cross come in, and it actually dropped behind him. Dropped behind him, and he stuck out his heel and directed the ball from behind him with the back of the heel of his right boot over his shoulder, over the keeper, into the far corner of the net. Now, that wasn't a fluke. That was quality finishing. He knew exactly what he was doing. The ball was behind him. He was mid-air, flicked it with the outside, the heel of his boot, over his shoulder, over the keeper, into the far corner. I thought that summed up everything that's great about this player, who has just got good feet, great touch, pace, etc., etc. And amongst the wonderful goals, I mean, from the first day, when Shaw hit a screamer into the top of the net on the opening day of the season at St. James's, and then Wilson with the outside of his boot going the other way, flicked it in the far corner. From those 2 goals right at the start of the season to Maxi at Wolves, the game after the 3-3 with Man City, and he scored that screamer to get us a point where the ball just dropped and he never took a touch. He just struck it and it went in the far corner. There was some great Almiron ones, but I'm sticking with Isaac scoring at Forest.
Okay, great stuff. What about you then, Mal? Best goal of the season.
Right, for me, and John actually just slightly mentioned it, and I've looked back, and we have had some great goals scored this season, but it was that Shah strike right at the very beginning.
Yeah,
it was just so clean. It was a real perfect strike, and so if I'm going to give a goal of the season, I want to give it to perfection, and that was absolute perfection. And I've thought about a number of other goals. Almiron, he had that little run, and I know they were all pretty much identical, John, but they were absolute crackers.
They were absolutely.
Yeah. There was the one where Isak created the goal, and he came dribbling along the dead ball line. I think it was at Everton, wasn't it?
Mm. Oh yes, yes, it was.
Yes, and
yes,
that just that dribble alone, it was absolutely wonderful to watch. How did he do it? And I still struggle to describe it. But just for absolute clean strike, I'm going to give it to Shah.
The interesting thing, Stephen, just because Malcolm touched on it there, and it's not a category that we're picking the best of, but by Jove, what if we'd had the best assist? That up the line by Isak at Everton, where there was no room. He couldn't go left because he was coming up the dead ball line. He couldn't go left because the ball was out of play. He could only go right. He had 3 defenders on him, and he just, honest to God, I thought I was watching Elvis Presley. It's the best shake of the hips I've ever seen. I mean, he was going left, right, and then he just rolled it in for Murphy to stick it in the net. I mean, that assist, his feet were absolute. There was one, I watched it again, guys. There was one defender, he beat him straight away. He got him on the dead ball line. He beat him. And the defender was stupid enough to come back at him. The defender should have said, I have looked a fool once, I ain't going to look a fool twice. He'd come back at him, so he just done it again. I mean, it was ridiculous. Now, if you look at that assist, it was so different, but was it better than the one with the outside of his boot by Joe Willock against Spurs when he swept the ball into Isak's path? It was a bit like Terry Hibbert, Malcolm.
It was
the way he swept it. Now, I think those two.
And he knew exactly what he was doing, John.
Oh, absolutely.
And it was all so
fabulous,
perfect.
Yeah, those 2 assists, which were totally different, but high on skill. I don't think were the best 2 assists in Newcastle United season. I think they were the best 2 assists in the Premier League last season. That's how good they were. And I'm not going to pick between them because I can't. I think they were both so different and so wonderful. And I haven't got a category, so Steve ain't forcing me to. So I'm saying, what about those 2 assists? Weren't they fabulous?
Yes.
Yeah.
They really were.
Absolutely brilliant. And 68 goals, as you say, it was quite timely of the club to release a video, John, with them all on their YouTube channel.
I was very grateful for that.
Okay, the next category is save of the season, and a little bit harder this one in the sense that the club, John, don't release a video with the best save of the season, which is maybe they will, maybe they won't, who knows? But goalkeepers often maligned because they only tend to get remembered for the howlers that they let in. But save of the season, John, is the one that sticks out.
There's. I'm going to do the easy bit first. The man that's going to win save of the season is Nick Pope. That's the easy bit. Because Dubravka made a couple of saves at Chelsea, but I think it was Nick Pope, Dubravka had a great reputation at Newcastle and has been a good servant in Newcastle in what I call the dark days, the days of prior to the takeover, prior to Eddie Howe. In the dark days, Dubravka was a top-class goalkeeper, mainly because he had to be. He got so much practice that he was bound to look good in the end. He was bound to make a string of good saves. But Pope has been a step up, a significant step up from Dubravka, and I think this season has proved that. I've gone through. He's kept so many clean sheets as Nick Pope, and I think one of his great assets, is that his concentration levels are so high. He has gone through a match where Newcastle have peppered the opposition and absolutely, hammered them to death. And then he's had to pull out one great save when his concentration might not have been there, but it was there. And I'll give you 2 examples of that. The last home game, when we played Leicester, we had about 28 shots, and then he had to make one at the end in a 0-0 draw. We could have lost when we needed the 1 point for the Champions League. And his concentration level was so high early in the season, he did it against Crystal Palace. And another 0-0, when we were hammering them, suddenly they come away and a lad called Jean-Philippe Mateta swerved in the penalty area and hit one for the top corner, and he flashed a hand out, made a terrific save. Ironically, for me, why it's ironic, I'll tell you, the best save of the season was in a match when, unbelievably, Nick Pope let in 3 goals. The 3-3 draw with Manchester City. There was Haaland, who scores for fun and is a beast of a finisher, physically and in his ability to finish. Haaland went through our defence like a knife through butter in the penalty area, and in mid-stride unleashed a shot that was flying in the bottom corner. Nick Pope went full length, got a hand to it, onto the post and out for a corner. It was, if he'd been an inch wrong in his lift off, if he'd been an inch out, he wouldn't have reached it. And if he'd reacted an inch, a split second too late, he wouldn't have reached it. It was so amazing. It was only in the replay that I actually knew he tipped it on the post and out. You thought Haaland had just struck the post because it was such a great shot, and he went boom down. And then when you saw it again, you thought, wait a minute, that's in the corner. And he shoved it under the post. I think it was a stupendous save. And for me, it was the best of a lot of high-quality saves in that season. A lot.
Yeah. And by heavens, yes, it was a huge amount of quality from the guy. And, of course, we finished with the least goals scored against.
Absolutely right, Malcolm. Absolutely right.
And he was so responsible for that. The back four have been absolutely magnificent and well supported by the midfield. But some of the saves that Pope made were absolutely fantastic. But for me, the one that really meant something and was so important for the club was the one against Leicester later on. When he made that save, it earned us a point. The game should have been won, put to bed, but we just couldn't score that day. And you've got to be understanding about that, because you can't get it right all of the time. And so it's when things aren't going so well in the game, and you just need that something really special. And that was it. That moment from Pope, it kept Newcastle in the game against Leicester. It got that all-important point for the Champions League. And so, I'm going to go with that save against Leicester. It just meant, I think, so much to the club.
We've got to remember as well, when we're sitting talking and reviewing this season, what a killer blow it was for us and for him when Pope got sent off and missed the League Cup final. Oh. I mean, that was that blow to us. I'm not having to go at Karius, and I'm not blaming Karius for the 2 goals that Manchester United scored. But had Pope played, would that have given so much more confidence to the back four? Without question.
Yes, it would. Yes. John, I think that probably Pope would have done much better with the 2 goals that went in.
I think he would. You can't finger the kid, because it would be
Sure.
awfully unfair after what happened to him in the Champions League final. But this fella pulled off miraculous things, and we didn't have that. And the blow was incredible, guys. If we look back on that League Cup final, we lost Pope, who was stupendous in the best defence. I mean, not as Malcolm said, we let in the least goals, 33. We also had the least defeats, only 5. We shared both those with Manchester City, who won the title. That's how important Pope and the back 4 were. And if Pope getting sent off against Liverpool, we went to the final. We hadn't our second choice goalkeeper, Dubravka, because he'd already played for Manchester United in the League Cup. We hadn't our third choice goalkeeper, Darlow, because he was on loan at Hull City. We had our fourth choice goalkeeper in, Karius, and our fifth choice goalkeeper, Gillespie, on the bench.
I
mean, what sort of blow was that for a League Cup final? So that tells us what Pope meant to Newcastle.
But it's going to be one of those great football quiz questions, isn't it?
Always, mate. Who was the goalkeeper that made his debut for Newcastle in a Wembley Cup final and never played again? That's a question, and the answer is, can't remember his name, but it's that fella with a bun on the back of his head that played for Liverpool. It's got to be one of them, isn't it?
Yes, isn't it just? Karius,
I tell you what they're not going to answer, Malcolm, when you say, tell us who played in goal for Newcastle in a cup final and who was the cover goalkeeper on the bench. And the answer is Karius and Gillespie. How many people in 10 years' time, not now, in 10 years' time will get that right?
Very, very few.
Yes, absolutely.
Very few. Dear me. Yeah.
Okay, that's your goal of the season, and that's your save of the season. Match of the season, John.
Here we go again, and we can go for loads of them. I mean, I could actually go for Man City 3-3, even though because it had everything bar 3 points for us. You can look at Brighton 4-1 because they were held up as the perfect side that's made the biggest strides forward. No, they're not the club that made the biggest strides forward. We are the club that made the biggest strides forward because we went from bottom of the league when Howe arrived halfway through last season to fourth top and in the Champions League. But for me, the match of the season, because I'm biased and I wanted to bring Newcastle United in the ascendancy, was Spurs 6-1. I sat next to Malcolm at that game in the press box, and we were 3 up in 9 minutes. And I was pinching myself, and I said to Malcolm, can you just nip me to make certain I'm awake? Because I think I'm sleeping. I think I'm sleeping here and dreaming all this. We're 3 up in 9 minutes, 5 up in 21 minutes. And remember, it's no good people saying, oh, look how rubbish Spurs are this season, etc. At that time, Spurs were 5th and we were 4th. And this was billed as the shootout to decide who would get the last Champions League place.
Yeah, it was.
If Spurs won, we were in trouble. If we won, we got a little bit of breathing space. That's how it was built. Within 9 minutes, I said to Malcolm, have a look up there, mate. Yeah. And I pointed up in the ceiling to where the Spurs fans were sitting. They were going out.
And they were leaving.
Gone. They were leaving. I mean, it was
shaking their heads.
It'd come from London, and they were going to the boozer in the town to watch the rest of the game and get a drink. And by 20 minutes had gone, we were 5-0 up. And Murphy did this sensational shot from about 30 yards that flew in the net. Remember the famous fail? He went up close and his eyes got bigger.
What a strike.
I mean, it
beautiful.
It was 5 and 20 minutes were awful in the second half. We only scored once. But it was 6-1 at the end. For me, that first 45 minutes was dreamland. And so I'm picking that one.
Okay.
Malcolm.
Well, John actually has mentioned the game that I'm going to select. And that was the Man City 3-3 draw at St. James. Newcastle United went 3-1 up. And to do so against the best side, certainly in this country and perhaps in Europe, and more than likely in Europe. Newcastle United totally, utterly outplayed Manchester City for a good 30 to 40 minutes. And they went 3-1 up. My word, I don't think Man City had been 3-1 down in a very, very long time. But I just found the whole game quite fascinating, because as on top and so brilliant when Newcastle been, but then a bit later in the game, I saw 20 minutes of the most unbelievable football, attacking football from Manchester City. We saw the very best of both sides over those 90 minutes. And those last 20 minutes from Manchester City, where they got back to 3 each, they were simply unplayable. And I had this game. It was just running through my mind for weeks and weeks afterwards. It was that good, and so there is no other game that I can even consider for this particular title. And it was that I saw the very best of two very, very good sides, and I was honoured to be there.
Okay, great stuff. Whizzing through these, our next category is Young Player of the Season, John.
Yep, well, okay. I had to give this some thought. And if the cut-off point, and I think in most awards that are given nationally, the cut-off point on, what is the definition of a young player? Is it a player of inexperience? Is it a player of a certain age? What is a young player? And I think when I look nationally at that, it seems to be that the cutoff point's 23 years of age. If you're above that, you can't be young player of the year, even if, like Karius, you're making your debut and you're 31 or whatever he is. But to be the young player of the year, you've got to be anything up to 33. If that is so, and that's the yardstick I have used, there's 3 outstanding players come into that category, all of them because they are 23. And that's Isak, Botman and Willock. And all 3 would have a case to be the best young player, because Botman's had an outstanding season, just haven't come in. Willock has been talked about as possible for England and might have got in this latest squad, but for his injury that spoiled his season for him. But I'm going to go for Isak, because what he has produced in terms of showing he was a £60 million signing, the club record signing. And then it was suggested for ages he couldn't even get in the side, first because of injury and second because he allegedly could only play centre forward, and Wilson was our centre forward. And Eddie Howe built up that by saying very reluctantly they could play together, but not really. They're really both for the same position. I'd be reluctant to play them together. And by the way, together, I don't mean in the way Malcolm used to play with Tudor and Shearer used to play with Ferdinand. They don't have to be partners. He can play wide, as he proved in Isak, and he did with Wilson through the middle and another wide player on the other side. But Isak's feet, his quickness of foot, his quickness of mind, and his quickness running-wise, I thought he brought dimensions to Newcastle that nobody else did, that we didn't have. And I'm a great lover of the art of football, the ability of football, the creativeness of football instead of destroyers. I know we need destroyers, but I'm Fantasy Island guy with football. I love to be entertained. I love to see people do things other people can't do. And I think Isak has a big dollop of that in his makeup. I mean, for such a tall guy, he's got such quick and intricate feet. I think he's terrific. So I'm going to make him my young player.
Okay, John, that's great. What about you, Mal?
Well, I'm going to give this to Sean Longstaff because
he's 28, Malcolm.
Is he as old as that? Oh, you
He is.
surprised
I
me,
looked him
John.
up. I was gonna bring him into it, and then suddenly I saw his age.
Right. Well, you surprised me. I thought. Do you know? I only thought he was 23.
Mm.
Mm.
I was surprised at that age, and I'm certain I'm right. But he was certainly well beyond 23.
Good heavens above! It seems to be a thing in this game that there aren't that many kids who get through and make first team quality.
Early on,
So many are held back and get into the side at sort of 25, 26.
And that's what's happened here. And funny enough, the three that I mentioned, Mal, Isaac, Bachman, and Willick, two others I would give honourable mentions to, just in case it helps you with your thinking on this. Two others outside of those three would be Elliot Anderson, who I think showed that he's going to, and he's only 20-year-old, showed he's going to be a quality player. And the other one, just in passing, he couldn't win the award because he only had about 10 minutes on the field. But Lewis Miley, who was only 17 and went on at Chelsea and struck the bar in that very short. He is going to be. It would
have been lovely for that to have gone in, John. It would have been so lovely. And I sincerely wish that they had done their job properly and they hadn't disallowed Elliot Anderson's goal. I thought that was a shocking decision, absolutely shocking, and it still leaves me scratching my head as to
have a think about who it is, and if you would, Steve, run the adverts up because there's a parcel being delivered at the door, and I'm the only one.
Here we go. Here's the ads.
A big thanks to all our sponsors: Skips and Bins, telephone 0800 25 45 25 3, email inquiries at skipsandbins.com, website skipsandbins.com, easy contract free and pay as you go waste collection. A big thanks to Mr. Vicky's sauces, which are handmade in Cumbria. You can find them at their website, mrvickys.co.uk. If you want to place an order, call 01768 210 102 or email info@mrvickys.co.uk. A big thanks to Media Arts for all the help with the video side of things, and at qtechshop.co.uk, the makers of pool tables and snooker tables in Wallsend, Newcastle, and the guys who run our website, NUFCmatters.com. If you like the channel, please hit the like underneath the video. It helps us grow. And click share and share to your other social media. If you want to help us financially, please click join. And there's a range of different packages and it explains how you can do that. If you want to become a cult member and receive these goodies, a scarf, a pen, and a cup and a membership card and entry into the monthly draw, for a one-off fee of £25, simply go to nufcmatters.com and find cult membership. If you've got a smartphone, put it over this QR code now. It'll take you straight there. We're also available as a podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and other podcast providers. And we also support the food bank on this channel. The Matchday Bucket helps you donate virtually. Go to nufcfansfoodbank.co.uk to find out more. We've got some events coming up over the course of the next 12 months. An evening with John Anderson takes place at the Tynemouth Surf Cafe. Only limited tickets available. 13th of June. Go to their website to buy tickets. Bend it like Bobby. Cometh the hour, cometh the man. And just after the hour, the man did cometh at the double, as it was time to bend it like Bobby. It's a comedy play. It's a rehearsed reading by Jim Orr. It features myself and a few other cast members. Friday the 16th of June. Tickets on sale at newcastlelegends.com and they're only £5. An evening with Frank Clark. Well, this is our Christmas due. Thursday, December the 7th. Tickets are £15 from nufcmatters.com at the Tyneside Irish Centre. And a big one for the new year. January the 25th. Keegan, Waddle and Beardsley and special guests back together. The class of 1984 at the Tyne Theatre and Opera House on Westgate Road. Tickets available direct from the venue. If you like t-shirts and you want a few for the summer, get yourself to nufcmatters.com. The Isaac t-shirt is proven very popular.
Longstaff is 25, says Andy H. Geordie Toomba Life says he's 25 as well.
That'll be right. Well, both wrong. And he wasn't 23 and he's not 28. But I don't know that 25 qualifies for a young player.
I wouldn't have had him down as a young player. Mal, have you come to a conclusion who you would give it to on the limited availability?
Okay. Right. Yes, I'm going to make a choice, but I'm going to give some praise to Sean Longstaff along with it, and I'm going to go for Willock because at the start of the season I honestly feared that Willock was going to prove himself not up to the standard that was necessary, but he has done, and he's certainly done it in style, but at the same time that he created a very, very good partnership with Sean Longstaff. The two of them, they really worked well together, and Sean Longstaff, that he's done more running in the Premiership than just about anybody else. He's phenomenal on that, and he's always making himself available. But the beauty of what Sean allows other players to do is fantastic. And Willock made the most of it, and the way that he was getting forward so often. So I could, if John hadn't gone for Isaac, I probably would have gone for him. But as John did go for him, I'm going to go then for Willock, simply because he did a far, far greater job than I thought he was actually capable of. And it was a very positive one throughout the season. Certainly the manager has stuck with him and has had real faith in him. So that would have done him the world of good. And he's taken on a terrific responsibility there in midfield, and has worked well with others. And so I'll go with Willock, because he probably has been the surprise player for me this season. He's done a lot better than ever I expected.
Okay, we got there in the end with that one. Player of the season should be a bit easier, John.
Oh, now there's a corker. Player of the season. It would be easier to say who's not player of the season, because I honestly believe that you can go 1 to 11 and they all qualify to be considered. The only two in the squad this last season that I wouldn't consider for player of the year are Chris Wood and John Joe Shelby. And I wouldn't consider them as players of the year for Nottingham Forest. Never mind for us to get rid of. Everybody else deserves a shout. You could make a case, for example, for Nick Pope. You could make a case for Isaac on the second half of the season. You could make a case for Dan Byrne on playing left back so well when he's a centre half. You could make a case for Bruno in the first half of the season before he got the bad injury that he carried. But for me, there was two outstanding players, and there's only a paper's width between them for me. One is Kieran Trippier and the other is Joe Linton. Kieran Trippier, because he's our standout player. He is our leader. He was the guy that came here first and opened the door for everybody else to come. He's a dead ball specialist. He's a great leader of men. He's everything right. But I'm actually going to go, and I'll explain why, for Joe Linton. And the reason why I'm going for Joe Linton is I cannot believe the change has been in a man. Malcolm was talking about how Joe Willock has gone from somebody Malcolm feared wasn't going to make it here to being on the verge of the England team. This guy is the weakest centre forward I've ever seen in my life. I mean, he was terrified of his own shadow in the penalty area. He was terrified of his own shadow. He was built like the Incredible Hulk. and he fought like Tiny Tim. He was absolutely not a Newcastle United number 9. What is he now? He is an awesome midfielder. He's an enforcer. He's the dirtiest bloke in the Premier League. And I'm saying that both officially and as a compliment. It's official because they go on stats, which are the most booked player, i.e. yellow cards, and the most tackles. And he's top of that.
Fouls, John.
Fouls, sorry, not tackles. Absolutely correct. Fouls. So he's officially the dirtiest player. And I think that's wonderful because we need somebody that's going to rattle cages, and he will rattle cages. And I tell you what, his transformation is summed up by the fact that when he was centre forward at Newcastle, he was Tiny Tim, and now he's playing in midfield. He's good enough to be in the Brazilian national squad. And the Brazilians are still the best natural footballers on planet football. And so that is the transformation. And he's carried it. He's got a heart the size of a frying pan. Even in the bad days when he was the poor centre forward, he never complained. He never moped. He never said, poor me in public. He didn't get a pet lip on. He took it all on himself and was desperate to become successful. And he's oft deserved his place in the sun. So I'm going only just for Joe Linton from Kieran Trippier.
Okay, yeah, it is tougher than you think, this question. Who was your player of the season, Mal?
Right. I think Joe Linton, as you rightly say, John, has been absolutely outstanding this season. But there is one man who not only has given such high quality football out on the pitch, but he's also led the team brilliantly, and he is talking all of the time, and he leads right from the front, and he's on at players all of the while, and he gives great advice, great instruction, and that's Kieran Trippier. I think he's been one of the best right backs in the country, along with possibly the best captain in the Premiership, and he's a great advisor on the field. He never stops talking. He'll go and he'll put his arm, whenever the ball goes out of play or there's a little bit of a hold up, he'll go and he'll have his arm around one of the players, and he'll just be helping them along, maybe just correcting something in their game or positioning or whatever. But he's one of those players who sees everything that's going on the field, remembers it, and looks to put it right. And for sure, he is going to be one hell of a coach when he retires from playing. How long he will continue to play, I don't know. But I would dearly love to see him on the coaching staff when he does retire here at Newcastle, because I think he's going to have a huge amount to offer. And he's got this fabulous experience, and he's able to get it across to players in such a lovely way that it you can sense that he drives them on, but they respect him and love him for the way that he does drive them on. And so, yeah, for me, Kieran Trippier.
Okay, Kieran Trippier gets Malcolm's vote. Final category for this season is moment of the season. And moment of the season can be anything. It could be something on the pitch. It could be something off the pitch. It could be a personal memory. It could be whatever. But what was your moment of the season, Gibbo?
Great question. This is not the answer, but I would like there have been, if there'd been a man of the season, I would have given it to Eddie Howe. And I was wanting to give Eddie Howe an award desperately, but he couldn't fit into any of those characters. And I haven't made him my moment, but I want to make a special creation of Man of the Year. And my Man of the Year would be Eddie Howe, because he has epitomised everything that's good about Newcastle United. He has been the miracle worker that has turned Almiron and Shaw and Sean Longstaff and Jacob Murphy and everybody into wonderful players. Joe Linton, perfect example, who were just average players. We've bought well and he's integrated them well. He is Mr. Unflappable, while Pep and Arteta and Klopp go absolutely crackers on the touchline, explode like jumpy jacks all over the place. You've got to mop them up into a sack at the end of the game and take them away to be reassembled before the next game. And he is just straight bat and pad, straight bat and pad, straight bat and pad. So he's my man of the year, my moment of the season. And I found difficulty with this because it's a fascinating one, Steve, because as you said in introducing it, it's open to anything. It's open to absolutely anything. And I suddenly decided two things. I wanted to pay a compliment to Eddie Howe, which I've just done as man of the year. And I want to not overlook this, which is my moment of the season. And it's for War Flags, who have turned St. James's Park into the most atmospheric football stadium, not only in England, but I would dare bet in the world. The fans have got an awful lot to do with it as well, of course, naturally. But the idea of the flags, I go up into St. James's Park press box 10 minutes before kickoff because I want to see the display of flags and the atmosphere and the chanting and I used to go up 10 minutes after the kickoff under Ashley and Steve Bruce because I knew it would be 3 down. Now I want to get up there early and get the atmosphere. How long is it since I've wanted to do that? We have been the greatest supporters of failure. I've said this many times, Geordies, there's ever been. We're now the supporters of success. And when you see the joy on the faces of the fans and you see the inventive way that the flags are used with certain themes running per match and certain slogans on big flags that are draped across one of the ends, I feel that I want to mention what my cathedral on the hill, the same as Bobby Robson's cathedral on the hill, what it's become, because that has been part of the joy of this season. So I'm saying moment of the season, War Flags, atmosphere, pre-match and during match, it's in James's Park.
Okay. Your moment of the season, please, Mal.
Well, I think for me, it was that actual second where the realization that we were qualified to go into the Champions League struck home. And it's going to bring us so much wonderful football, great excitement. We are going to have moments that we will remember forever this coming season. And it was all because of what we did this season. And so it was that moment. We are in the Champions League. Oh, dear me. I could have absolutely just leapt for joy. It was something that I will treasure because I know that this coming season, starting in August, we are going to be left with so many fabulous memories. And John, as you say, I think that what War Flags have done is absolutely fantastic. It really is. And they're not creating the support. What they're doing is enabling the support to give it of its very, very best. And yeah, I think it's incomparable by the rest of the world for what's going on at St. James Park. I really do. And
what I'm thinking, Malcolm, is when the great royalty of Europe be that Real Madrid or Barcelona or Bayern Munich or Inter Milan. If one of those sides comes into our group and come to St. James's Park, and they will subconsciously think, oh, this is a team that hasn't qualified for 20 years. It's this, it's not this, it's not that, it's not the other. They will be blown away by the atmosphere at St. James's Park. They will come here and say, what's all that about? That is absolutely fabulous. And it's going to dawn on the rest of Europe this coming season what we've got at St. James's.
There has been a moment from about 20 years ago that has kept running through my head this season of the excitement to come. And it was when we played Juventus, if you remember, in the Champions League about 20 odd years ago.
Yes, yeah, we did. Yes, we did.
And did we not beat them 3-2?
We beat them 1-0, Malcolm.
1-0.
Andy Griffin scored.
3-2 was
good heavens above, yes.
3-2 was when we beat Barcelona, Malcolm.
Barcelona. Okay, but nevertheless, I remembered just that unbelievable feeling of excitement that the Champions League created within me, and I think in most of us. And it's something that goes just a bit beyond the domestic competitions, and for us to be able to have that opportunity this coming 12 months to witness that kind of wonderful historic moments. And and I remember the Champions League more than I remember anything else. From 20 years ago.
You're right.
And that's what we're going to have. We are going to have a 9-month season of fantastic memories created for our futures.
I mean, it's funny what you're saying there, just when you were asking about those European games. And I was thinking, braggarts, us Geordies. I mean, I people are saying we should be afraid, talking about the great sides of Europe, etc., etc. Hey, we have had the least defeats, 5 in the Premier League this year. The least goals scored against us, 33, in a league of the depth of the Premier League, with Manchester City, and we've equalled their records, and they're just about to play in the Champions League final. So why should we be afraid of anything? Now, I am also, because I'm so old, I remember in Newcastle, and I was sitting watching Newcastle beat the big names, because we beat Barcelona 3-2 in the Champions League. We beat Juventus 1-0 in the Champions League. And in 1970, in the old European Fairs Cup, after we'd won it in 69, we beat Inter Milan at St. James's Park. So Newcastle in Europe have beaten Inter Milan, Barcelona, and Juventus. So
well, as you know, John, I've got a daughter over in Italy.
Yes.
Georgia.
Yes. Milan, yes.
And she supports Inter Milan.
Family.
So she is supporting Inter Milan this weekend, and I've been saying to her, "Don't think you've got a chance. Man City are the better side."
Absolutely.
So we're at war at the moment.
Well, I wouldn't mind us drawn into Milan just so I could. I know that young lady, and I would enjoy watching the two McDonald's having a dip at each other.
Oh, yes.
Outside of that, I would like to draw Real Madrid, because I've seen we beat Inter Milan. I'd beat them again, man. And because I've seen we beat Juventus, and because I've seen we beat Barcelona, I want to see we beat Real Madrid. So I'm wanting to draw Real Madrid or Bayern Munich. But Real Madrid, it sounds what it sounds, doesn't it? It reeks of Di Stefano and Puskas, and it reeks of all the Gento. I mean, it reeks of, and all the way through. And yes, in Gareth Bale, David Beckham, and one bloke it doesn't reek of is Michael Owen, although he actually did play there. But I don't think he's in the top 10 Real Madrid players of all time, or he's certainly not in mine. He's not
No,
in the top 10
certainly not.
Newcastle United players of all time. But there we are. But I would love to play Real Madrid. But memories. And Malcolm's right. The great thing is, if we think this season's been great, wait till next.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's a wrap on the awards from Malcolm and John today. Got time for a couple of questions. Tom Dixon says, Newcastle want Loris Karius to remain at the club next season. What do you reckon about that, John? I mean, it would mean, I guess, that Dubravka must be on his way out.
No, I don't think that. I mean, I'm not saying it doesn't mean that, Steve. But if you look at it this way, and I've been thinking a lot, the goalkeeping situation is so fluid, it's untrue. Outside of Nick Pope being number one, undisputed. After that, you need 3 keepers, don't you? You need a third keeper because of injuries or a suspension like Nick Pope got. You need 3 goalkeepers. Now then, nobody is absolutely nailed on apart from Nick Pope. So supposing Nick Pope's number 1, supposing Dubravka stays as number 2, who's going to be number 3? It's not going to be Darlow because he does want to go, I believe, because he wants first team football because he's never really had it. He was number 2 at Newcastle to Dubravka. So if Darlow goes, Gillespie's contract is not going to be renewed, so he goes. So there's 2 goalkeepers out. If we had Pope and Dubravka, we've got to have a third goalkeeper, and that could be Karius.
Okay.
Because the third goalkeeper's got to be a Gillespie-Karius type of keeper who's willing to sit there as third keeper.
Sure, yes. Because there are 2 involved with the first team at all times. It used to be that there was only 1.
Absolutely, but yeah, right, Malcolm. So I would like Dubravka to stay as the number 2 because if Dubravka goes, and he could want football late in his career at this stage, you can also make out a case for Darlow wanting first team keeping. And I don't want me 1, 2, and 3 to be Pope, Karius, and Gillespie. With utmost respect to the last 2, I don't want that. I don't think that's good enough for Europe. Your number 2 goalkeeper to be either Karius or Gillespie. So, it's very, very fluid. But if Karius stays, I don't think that means automatically Dubravka's gone. Dubravka can be number 2 and Karius can be number 3. Yeah. That would be the best situation out of the current scenario. And if you don't have that, Steve, you've got to buy a number 2 keeper because there's nobody good enough to be number 2.
Yeah.
You've got to buy. And we have got enough buying to do without having to add a goalkeeper to the list.
We certainly do, John. Yes. We certainly do.
We don't want that to be an added thing to do. So I would be happy to go 1 Pope, 2 Dubravka, 3 Karius.
3 Karius, yes. We don't, and we don't want to cause ourselves further problems and limitations as well. So
if we've got to
those 3 happy.
If we've got to spend money, Malcolm, to sign a number 2 goalkeeper because he's got to be of certain quality, then we're taking money out the pot that we want for midfielders and left backs and forward, etc., and I don't want to do that.
I'm going to reiterate things that I've said on the program 2 or 3 times before, but this is absolutely vital. Going into a season with the Champions League, it increases the number of games so much that you pretty much need to be able to field 2 separate sides, and we're nowhere near that. And so we don't want players to leave. We want to be bringing them in to really push the numbers up.
Apart from Ryan Fraser.
Is he a player?
No, but we wouldn't mind him leaving.
No, he's welcome to leave. In fact, I'll take him to the station if you want.
Might have time for 1 more. Barry Hogan says, Malcolm, I am fed up with some of the press linking this with Harry Maguire. He says, surely even Eddie Howe couldn't turn him into a decent player. What do you lads think? Eddie's not a magician.
And he wouldn't be interested at all. He's too good a judge. He wouldn't touch Harry Maguire for love nor money, I don't think. And
I certainly, Malcolm, I agree with you. I certainly wouldn't want Harry Maguire to come as the centre-half addition, because we're looking for a right-sided centre-half.
Sure.
I wouldn't want Maguire to come. The only thing I dispute what that gentleman said along the bottom, and it was all absolutely, I agree with it 100% about Maguire, the question. The only thing I dispute is the last bit, which says that Eddie Howe isn't a magician. I think he is a magician. When I look at what he did with... Well, no.
Sorry, lads, my phone rang.
I thought it was Eddie phoning in to say, you're right, Gibbo, I am a magician. And I think what he's done with some of the players, he is a magician. But I think it would be a step too far asking him to do that with Harry Maguire. Bear in mind, if we're being serious for 1 second and treating the question serious, you don't want Harry Maguire, because at this stage of his life, he will only go to a club that absolutely says to him, you're guaranteed first team regular football, because that's the one thing he hasn't got at Manchester United, and he needs to keep in the England side. And I don't want us to be saying that to him. And also the wages that he's about to drop on his wage at Manchester United, he would still smash the wage structure at St. James's Park, which would not be beneficial to the dressing room morale. So I wouldn't want them. No.
Plus, John, it doesn't compare with what we've got at the moment.
No,
that
he doesn't.
It has been absolutely fantastic this season, and they're playing in a way that wouldn't suit Maguire, because he wants to keep dropping off. Well, we had that under Steve Bruce, and it was absolutely horrendous what was going on with that.
I mean, if we are going to change the back four or add to it numerically in the squad, which we are with a centre-half and probably a left-back, I think if there's anything at all that the current back four lack, and their record's as good as Manchester City's and better than literally everybody else's, but if there's anything we lack a little bit, it's pace. And Maguire hasn't got that. And I would like my new centre-half, Malcolm, and I think you might agree, I would like to ask you, I would like my new centre-half to have some pace.
Oh, absolutely, John. And I always look at players. Would I like to play against them? And I'd love to play against Harry Maguire.
Oh, you would have been queuing up. You would have been queuing up.
Yeah. I would have loved to have played against him.
Fantastic, lads. That hour has gone round very quickly, as always. We will be continuing the show throughout the summer. Interesting to hear some of the speculation and discuss some of the speculation about players being linked with Newcastle and players going out. So we will be continuing that throughout the summer on a Thursday. But for now, Malcolm, John, have a wonderful weekend. Enjoy the sun. And I will see you next week. Take care, guys.
All right. Take care, everybody, indeed.
What a joy it's been, mate. What a joy it's been. And that's just the programme, not Newcastle United.
Take care, lads. Bye-bye.
Take care, mate.